Good morning, everybody. It's 9 a.m., and I'm going to ask Rosie, are we ready to begin the meeting?
Yes, Madam President, we are.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. I'm Lisa Marie Harris, and I'm the president of the board, and it's 9 a.m., and I'm going to call the March 13th, 2026 meeting of SDCERS to order. Rosie, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Madam President, we have a quorum with the following member absent, Mr. Paul Kaufman.
Okay, great. Moving to public comment, do we have any public comments? And before we do that, I'd like to recognize Rosie and welcome back. We missed you. You were gone for way too long.
Thank you, Madam President. I really appreciate that.
And thank you, Melody, for stepping in. You were wonderful. You made it smooth during that period of time, so thank you so much. So let's move on to public comment. Do we have any public comment?
Yes, Madam President, we do have a public comment for today's meeting, but we will hold this public comment until our disability section arrives.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, moving on to Section 4, approval of the consent agenda items, service retirements, drop entries, drop retirements, training, and board agenda calendar. Before I move a motion for approval, would anyone like to pull any of those items for discussion? Okay, so hearing no request to pull the items, may I please have a motion and a second? Do we have a second?
Just pausing for, yeah, stall. I could try to.
Close it, open it up.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Christina. Okay, before we vote, are there any further comments on the consent? Okay, hearing none, we can vote.
And just for the record, if I may, Madam President, was moved by Paul Lutz and seconded by Ms. Christiana Gauga. Please feel free to cast your votes. And with all votes in, we pass this motion with 8 yeas and 1 abstain.
Okay, thank you. So moving to Section 5, Business and Operations, we have 2 action items on our business operations agenda this morning, starting with our first action item, election of board president. Greg, will you please introduce this action item?
Good morning, members of the board. It's a pleasure to see you this morning. Before us today, we have a responsibility to elect a new board president or put into process the election of a new board president. As many of you know, we have a vice president, and traditionally we've used kind of succession planning where we use the vice president role as a mentoring role for succession planning so that they can step forward and be our next president. The succession plan was interrupted with the departure of our previous vice president, and our new vice president is very new in her role, so thank you, Michelle. But we were thinking about succession planning and having continuity of leadership, and the idea came up to waive the 2-term limit rule and to really encourage Lisa Marie to serve another year to help provide mentorship and have Michelle participate in this leadership role for another year before hopefully being considered as our next board president. So with that, there's a motion before the board to waive our 2-year rule that's expressed in one of our policies and one of our charters, and to support Lisa Marie to provide leadership as the president for 1 more year. And she said she's willing to do this, but please, no 4 years, just 1 year. So with that, we would need a motion and a second, and open it up for discussion.
So, Madam President, it was moved by Roberta Spoon, seconded by Ms. Christiana Gauga, and board members, please feel free to cast your votes. And with all votes in, this motion passes 8 yeas and 1 abstain.
Thank you, Rosie.
That's how they suck you in.
Yeah, I know. Well, thank you all for allowing me to serve another year and to support Michelle in her role, and hopefully she'll be ready to move on in a year. so I can move on as well. Yes, thank you. So moving on to action item number 2 is the staff recommendation to adopt the June 30, 2025 valuation reports for the City of San Diego, the San Diego Unified Port District, and the San Diego Regional Airport Authority. With us today, we have actuarial evaluation reports from our plan, Sharon, and from Sharon, we have Jean and Alice. Jean, please begin when you're ready.
Material is going to be brief. We presented the same material back in January, and nothing has changed since then. So we're going to jump right to the June 2025 valuation results, and then we're going to do peer comparisons, public plan database and California systems, and then we'll end with projections and a brief comments about the experience study. In the appendix are additional items that we're not going to cover, but they were items that we covered back in January. So the June 30, 2025 valuation reflects various pay increases for different members. And as a comparison, the assumption is that an annual 3.25% increase. So anything above that contributed to what you'll hear soon, some of the liability losses. And then there was a final effort on Prop B, where the active police members in Tier 5 were converted to Tier 4. So the summary of the valuation results is split into 3 sections: what's happened to the membership, assets and liabilities, and then the contributions, or the ADC. And the only significant items in the membership is, you can see the payroll increased by over 10%, and 3% of that was attributable to growth in actives, and it's a little over 7% due to the pay increases. In the liability section in gray, you'll see liabilities grew less than both asset measures, the smooth asset measure and the market value, and that resulted in the unfunded liability dropping ever so slightly. And finally, the funded ratios in that section improved on both the smooth basis and the market value. Finally, the ADC increased by 9.8% in total. Most of it was attributable to the normal cost, and again, that was attributable to the growth in actives and the pay increases. The sources of change in both unfunded liability and ADC is shown on this chart. Let me walk through this first column, the actuarial liability. You see in the top row the results from last year, and then what we expected to happen if there were no gains and losses. And then you see a $187 million loss that was largely due to pay increases. And then there's some minor amounts for Prop B and PSC and drop. On the asset side, the large figure is going to be the asset gain of $89.2 million. So that directly offsets that liability loss. And the UAL column is simply the difference between the liability column and the asset column. And the total UAL changed by minus $27.9 million. And then the ADC increased by $30.1 million. Turned over to.
All right, great. And I'll step us through the Port District and the Airport Authority valuation results. So an item of note for the port was the opening of the plan from the members who were in that 5-year tunnel. And so as of 2024, in the ports tier, there was a group of members that had to wait 5 years before becoming eligible for SDCERS. So that provision was removed, and we saw a large influx of actives. And when we look at the summary of results in the top portion of this table on membership, in that first line, we see that the active member count increased by 30%, and that was due to all of the active members of the last 5 years who are still sitting in that tunnel, who now became active in SDCERS. And with that line item there on the active count increase, down below, when we look at the contribution from normal cost, that normal cost contribution increased from 6.4 million to 7.3 million, a 14% increase, due largely to that increase in active population.
Alice, could I just ask, how did that work during that 5-year period when they were not on board? So was the city and they contributing, but they weren't members? Oh, it was the port.
For the port. So employee was hired at the port. From the date of hire, they had to wait 5 years. At the first day of their 6th year, they became eligible for SDCERS. Then they entered the system, and that's when contributions were first made on their behalf by the port, and they themselves were making contributions from their biweekly pay.
So essentially they, so to speak, lost 5 years of whatever being in the system. I mean, there's nothing retroactive to their day of hire, right?
It's my understanding that it was just the tunnel was closed and they were effective at that date, was the first day of eligibility for SDCERS, so no retroactive.
Interesting.
Had it been
benefits.
retroactive, that would have created an unfunded liability after the 5 years.
Sure. I mean, somebody would have had to pay that. I was just intrigued that it, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So looking at the gray section where we summarize the results for the assets and liabilities, the funded ratio on the smooth value of assets and the market value of assets also increased. So on an actuarial basis, the funded ratio increased from 78.0% to 79.2%. And the ADC, we'll see the reconciliation of that contribution on the next slide. On this slide, we're summarizing the change in actuarial liability, assets, unfunded, and the contribution. To note that the market value return for June 30, 2025 came in just north of 9%, so that's higher than the expected return for the year. And on an actuarial basis, it was due to smoothing of those gains, came in at 7.5%. So in the asset column, that's where we see the asset experience gain contributing to the decrease in the ADC. So the contribution for the year for the port decreased by almost 1 million from 22.8 million to 21.9 million for the year. The Airport Authority, we always like to highlight their internal funding policy of maintaining that 95% target funded ratio. And sure enough, looking at the summary of results for the year, if we go straight to the middle section on the assets and liabilities, the funded ratio for the airport on an actuarial basis at 96.0% and on a market value 97.9%. So the airport is sitting in a very good position in terms of their funding status and a low unfunded actuarial liability. An item of note in the membership section, the airport had a decrease in the active count, and that decrease is driven by new members now being able to elect to enter a DC plan rather than to participate in SDCERS. And with that decrease in active membership, we see down below in the gold section, the contributions. The employer normal costs decrease because there are less actives earning a benefit in the coming year. There was also a significant.
Alice, can you remind us how many folks in the airport are electing the DC plan?
This is based on Scott from the airport who came here at the January meeting. He said 36% of new hires are electing the DC plan at this time. And last item of note in the contribution section, the UAL payment, so the payment for the unfunded, because the airport has such a low unfunded and the way the amortization payment schedule works, Their payment is actually, at this time, the interest on that unfunded. So when the unfunded was at 19 million, the interest set at 1.1 million, so the interest payment for the year 1.1 million. Now with that decreased unfunded, the interest payment is right around 789,000 for the year. When we look at the airports, we'll go straight, well, we'd like to point out the liability experience for the airport here because they came in at a $15,000 liability loss, which actuarially speaking.
Million.
Thousand for the airport. They're,
Oh, they said in dollars and thousands, so wouldn't 15,796 be 15 million?
sorry, I'm looking at in the actuarial liability column, the fiscal year end 2024 liability experience, the 15.
Oh, the
there,
15. I was
excuse
looking
me.
at the 15,
15 higher, yes. So that liability experience, it means that in aggregate, the actuarial assumptions are reasonable for the airport, and the experience is, with some gains, some losses, balancing out to a very minimal liability experience for the year. And the ADC, I'd like to point out, in that same liability experience line, the reduction in the ADC of 157,000, and that's largely due to less actives receiving or earning benefits, so a reduction in that normal cost goes into that component. So in total, the airport's contribution decreased by 371,000 for the year.
That concludes our summary of the valuation results. We're now going to compare SDCERS to your peers. And the first comparison would be nationally to over 200 plans that are maintained in the database that NASRA maintains. And this is showing the discount rate. And the gold dot is SDCERS, and it shows how over time you dropped from 8 and marched your way down to currently 6.5. The quartile distributions around that show where the other plans lie. And you can see back in the beginning of this time frame, there were plans up to 8.5%. And now the top plans are at slightly less than 7%. I think it's 6.75.
The top end is less than 7.5, and then.
Okay, I'm reading this wrong. Yeah. Yes. And you can see you're at the bottom quartile there, and although more plans are heading towards where SDCERS is. With respect to your funded status, you could see your gold dots early on. In many of the years, you were in the lower quartiles, and then you improved to the upper quartiles in the middle of this chart. And now other plans have caught up as they've lowered their discount rates, and you're smack in the middle of other large public plans. So again, this is the national comparison. Alice is now going to say, how do you compare to your peers here in California?
So when we look at the 39 systems, the 39 public systems in California on these same two comparisons, so discount rate trends and then the funded ratio, for the discount rate in the top graph, SDCERS in 2015 was sitting just north of 7%. You were the first to decrease to the 6.5%, and now many of the peers in California have come down to that 6.5% and even below, depending on the system. So in the bottom graph, we show a summary, and there are 5 other systems in California who are using a 6.5% discount rate. Six Flags, that's San Diego Transit. So the MTS has a small group of members. I actually consult to them as well. So I know that they're largely in CalPERS, but they have a small group of members who are in SD Transit, their specific plan, and it's mostly closed. So the 6% reflects their population.
Mm-hmm. And on the upper end, it's San Bernardino, right?
At the 725.
Yeah.
San Bernardino. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Looking at the funded ratio on a market value basis, SDCERS has set in the middle of the pack in California. Across the period from 2015 to 2024, we see that gold diamond sitting in the middle there, with the funded ratio now right around 78% on a market value basis. And down below, the distribution of those funded ratios, SDCERS sitting with his peers for the city is with one of the 7 in that range, 75 to 80%. The port on a market value basis is one group higher in the 80 to 85 range, and the airport sits in the second to highest with the funded ratio on a market value basis of 98%.
So finally, we're going to conclude with projections, and just to remind people what you're looking at here. The top graph there is the gray bars are the liabilities. The lines are the assets, and it's market and smooth value, but they're so close you can barely tell. At the very top of the chart are percentages. Those are the funded ratios. Then the bottom graph are the contributions. Gold would be the city contributions, and the other color is going to be member contributions. Then there's a red line there. The red line is going to stay there because in the subsequent charts, we're going to change the returns, and you can compare what this chart would look like to the next chart. So this is assuming 6.5 every year, which you all know I tell you every time, it's never going to happen.
We totally rely on that, Gene. Totally rely on that.
So I start with, what if you earned 16.5% this year? And do you happen to know what the year-to-date earnings are?
Karina, year-to-date?
Fiscal year to date was 6.8% yesterday from AM.
I forgot to mention this chart. The drop-off of the gold bars after a couple of years is due to the fully amortizing an initial 2007 unfunded liability base. And then later on, when you get to 100% funded, the city has a minimum contribution of, what, 275? And that drops off, and you can see the significant drop-off in the later years. With a 16.5% return, the plan reaches 100% funded much earlier, and that's why you have the big drop-off there in after roughly close to a decade. But now the reverse side, what if you have negative 3.5% for the year, and now you see the city's contributions exceed that red line, but yet you still head towards 100% funded in the later years.
Projections for the port, if we look at the contribution in the bottom graph, the contribution is held at that minimum UAL payment floor plus the normal cost and expenses, and that UAL payment floor sits at 13.3 million. So until the plan is fully funded, it is the contribution there is holding to that floor before it drops off in 2043. And then in the out years, we see that the member contributions and the port's contributions are similar in that cost sharing, the 50-50 cost sharing under the PEPRA active group. For the airport, they have a quicker path to full funding since they are almost there at the 96% right now. And there's some bouncing around in the middle on that contribution. We see the gold bar jumping up and down, and that's as the various layers of the amortization bases fall off. When a gain base is paid off, then that pull down on the UAL then causes the remaining layers to increase the contribution. So it's as the pattern of the different layers get paid off over time, the contribution bounces around ever so slightly until it reaches full funding.
Alice, I have a couple of questions.
Please.
So for the members for the airport that have elected to contribute to the DC plan, does the airport, as the plan sponsor, support do they contribute to it the same level as they would if they were in the DB plan?
I would turn that question over to Greg or Johnny. I am not familiar with the structure of the airport's DC plan.
Okay. That's okay if you don't have
I,
it, no.
I don't know the answer to that question, but I can find out. But I wanted to add a little bit more information. As my understanding in the airport plan, the employee, when they come in, default into the DC plan. Is that correct, Sandra? And so if we look at that, we've got 1/3 of the employees defaulting into the plan, which is, I would hope, would be apathy. But 2/3 actually take a proactive choice and actually move into the DB plan. So I was very pleased. I thought it would be a little bit different. I thought more people would default into the DC plan, but it's people are really, the airport employees are really valuing that DB benefit package.
And that's unusual.
It's good.
That's great, yeah.
And then I think it's interesting how the employee contributions almost match the employer contributions for the airport. Is it because of their highly valuation level?
So once the plan is fully funded, and then we're looking at normal cost, especially well out into the future in 2047, the actives that remain in the system are going to be PEPRA participants, and under PEPRA, there is a 50-50 cost share of that value of the benefit.
Makes sense.
Another way to also explain that is the city and the port have unfunded liability contributions that are kind of significant. The airport doesn't because it's so well-funded.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
And finally, for today, we'd like to wrap up and tell you that we will be coming back to you in September with the results of a comprehensive experience study. And in addition to the experience study, we'll also be performing a drop analysis. So in our triennial experience study, we look at all of the economic assumptions, discount rate, payroll growth, inflation. We look at all of the demographic assumptions, which include mortality and turnover for your membership. So are members retiring at a different rate, terminating, going out on disability? All of those factors of behavior come into play, and the assumptions in aggregate are what we use to value the liabilities on an annual basis for the valuation. So our team is already launching into the experience study cycle, and we'll come back to you in September with the full report on any recommended assumption changes and an assessment of, especially a thorough assessment of the economic assumptions to support where that discount rate is, where the inflation rate is, and wage inflation as well.
So Alice, it's helpful when you talk about where we are compared to our peers and the discount rate and so forth, and Jean. But the big picture is really going to be focused on us, right? It's how have we done over the years in terms of our return on investment? What are the likely? Are the projections reliable? And or I suppose, I guess Jean would say no. The projections are never reliable. So if we make reasonable assumptions going forward, is the discount rate in the right place, basically?
Right, and just, so for example, when we were here in January, we did mention Aon has presented in 2025 a couple of studies, their asset liability study and their asset allocation. And so we did look back at that and the expectations. So the expectation that they provided based on December 31st, 2024 results was 2.4 something percent. Then when they came back again, a subsequent study based on March 31st, it was lower at 7.3%. So their expectation based on the capital markets does change as they get new information on a quarterly basis, whereas the discount rate for evaluation, it's that long-term steady ship that sets a course with the fine-tune adjustments. But we do look at very specifically, we'll be reaching out to Karina and her team, to Aon, and receiving all of that information, seeing what SDCERS is doing, and also for perspective, looking at other advisors, not just Aon, but what other capital market advisors are saying, and the studies and the surveys that are out there.
So Chris, you mentioned what has the system earned? I think Aon presented the last 10 years with 6.9.
6.9.
Could you say that again? Sorry.
Aon presented a 10-year return, 6.9, but that's the least important factor. What the past has been, the most important factor is the expectations going forward and the board's risk tolerance.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Are you complete?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Are there any other further questions from the board? Okay. All right, well, this is an action item, so we'll need a motion and a second. Okay.
It was moved by Mr. Brett Bartolotta and seconded by Mr. Louis Maggi. And board members, please feel free to cast your votes. And with all votes in, Madam President, this motion passes 9-0.
Thank you, Rosie, and thank you, Jean and Alice, for presenting the June 30, 2025 valuations, and we look forward to seeing you both in September.
And Gene, I hope you get a little beach time while you're out here before you go back to chilly DC.
Maybe an hour and a half.
Okay, that item finishes our business operations agenda item. Next, we'll move to Section 6, the Audit Committee report. And the Audit Committee Chair, Gary McCormick, could not join us today, and he's our newly elected Audit Committee Chair. And as a member of the Audit Committee, I will provide the report. The Audit Committee met on March 4th, and we had 3 action items. Action 1 and 3 do not need a vote of the board today, as the board policy delegates authority to approve these items to the Audit Committee. However, Action 2, selection of an independent financial audit services firm, will require a vote of the board. The first action item was staff's recommendation to appoint a new Audit Committee Chair, and staff recommendation to appoint the Audit Committee Chair to serve no more than 1 year. And the Audit Committee did select Gary McCormick, and we're very pleased that he was able to step in literally at the last minute. So I certainly appreciate him and serving in that capacity. And we are fortunate to have his leadership and expertise. He's recently retired from his partnership role, so he definitely has the time. And the Audit Committee supported him. So this does not require a vote, just FYI. And hopefully he'll be able to come to the next meeting to present a report out. Second, the staff recommendation was to interview and select an independent financial audit services firm. And so the second action item is the staff's recommendation to interview and select an independent audit firm, SDCERS contract with MGO. Greg, you want to give us a summary on that action item?
Certainly. The Audit Committee authorized a RFP to be put out. So an RFP team led by our Chief Internal Auditor, Sarah Dixon, led an RFP team. 8 firms responded. The top 2 firms came in to do a presentation to the Audit Committee. Crow LLP and the incumbent, I'm probably going to get this right. Can you?
Macias, Ginny, and O'Connell.
There we go. Thank you. MGO. The incumbent, both were found to be very, very well qualified firms. MGO had a slight advantage in, I think, the depth of their bench when it came to investments and actuarial resources being immediately available. They also have a very deep experience. They've been our auditor for quite a few years. And they really know who we are, our risks, our strengths, our weaknesses. They know a lot about us and help hold us accountable in that way. And also their independence from the plan sponsors was a slight advantage. So the committee deliberated and strongly recommend the board select MGO as our financial statement auditor.
Thank you, Greg. And I would also add that MGO's team was local to San Diego, and that was an advantage. And they just had more team members dedicated to our system, and so they were the clear winner, in my opinion. So
How long have they been our auditors?
how many years?
Ted, do you know how long MGO's been our auditor?
Approximately 20 years?
But they do follow the rules of changing the principal.
Yes. They do rotate partners and senior management on our team.
So are there any questions about that? Okay, well, I will move that the board select Macias and Jennings to provide financial audit services. Or someone else if they get it before me.
It was moved by Michelle Bush, seconded by Roberta Spoon, and please feel free to cast your votes.
Okay. Yeah, I need some help. I don't know what I did. Thank you.
Slow today.
Yeah,
Oh,
it didn't move.
yeah, it didn't.
Yes, please.
Sorry. There you go.
Okay,
That
thank you.
works.
Okay.
So while we're muddling through this, oh, never mind. There we go.
And with all votes in, Madam President, this motion passes with 7 yeas and 1 nay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving to the, let's see, just want to make sure. Yes, so moving to consent item 3, staff's recommendation to approve internal audits 2027 budget and 2027 performance obligations. So as a result of the new global internal standards, Sarah Dixon brought forth to the audit committee recommending the audit committee approval of the 2027 internal audit budget and the 2027 performance obligations. The committee reviewed and proposed the budget for the internal audit division and found it to be sufficient and did not have any further recommendation to modify the administrative budget, which will address by the B&G committee. The audit committee unanimously approved the performance standards with no vote is required by the board today. Are there any comments? And Sarah, do you have any comments? No. Okay, thank you. So this completes the audit report, and we'll move to Section 7, Disability Committee, and I'll turn it over to Chair Paul Lutz.
Lisa Marie, could I just ask something?
Sure, go
I
ahead.
know audit committee is short of members or something. Where are we on that? How's that going?
That's great.
Yes, we do have a vacancy on the audit committee. Per the charter, we have sufficient numbers of members of the audit committee, but we do like to have a full committee, and we're out actively seeking. So if you know of anyone that would be a good fit with our audit committee, and you know, most people think, well, you need to be a very strong, accountant or something of that nature, and that's not true. Actually, we need someone with a very strong governance background. Having an accounting background is very helpful, but we can take all sorts of knowledgeable people from our community to serve on that committee would be a help. So if you know anyone, please let us know.
We don't have to go through the mayor's office.
No, it is an appointment by this board.
So if you all know anybody, please let Greg know.
But also, just to note, and I mean, it's the same problem we're having here, is that with that number of members, they needed unanimous votes on certain things to get things passed. And we have the potential to get into similar things where we've got to have 7 votes on pretty much everything, and there's only, 9 of us today. So it really has the potential to be a problem if we don't get that.
Right. I know Greg you have an upcoming meeting with the mayor that I might be joining with him about that. You want to share that?
Since it's not currently on an agenda topic, I'll save that for public comment, but I was going to talk a little bit about that.
Okay, great. Okay, turn it over to you, Paul.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. The Disability Committee met yesterday and approved the recommendations for consent items 1 through 4 and item 6. Item 5 will be pulled from the consent agenda for a separate vote
Okay.
due to the committee recommending the disability application be sent to a hearing rather than the recommended denial. Item 7 is being pulled from the agenda so the committee can continue its deliberation at its May meeting prior to making a recommendation to the board, and that had to do with the quantity of board members here yesterday and the vote being split. Any questions before I begin, or are there any requests to pull an item for a separate vote? Okay. Before we begin board discussion, I believe we have public comment. Rosie?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do. At this moment, we'd like to invite Mr. Ernesto Servin, apologize for that, to the podium.
And Mr. Servin was here yesterday and provided his comments, and happy to see you again here, Mr. Servin. And
Thank you.
we look forward to hearing what you have to say. And Rosie will be the timekeeper.
Thank
When
you.
you're ready, you may begin.
Good morning. I am here to address the recommendation to deny my industrial disability retirement based on Dr. Tayyab's report. After reviewing it, I must respectfully state it contains inaccuracies, omissions, and assumptions regarding my injury history, my work duties, and my medical records. Before joining the police department, I served as an infantryman, maintaining peak physical fitness through daily conditioning, calisthenics, and long runs. When I was hired by the San Diego Police Department, I had no pre-existing back injuries, passed the medical screening and physical abilities test, and continue to maintain my fitness as a police officer. I served 34 years with the San Diego Police Department, performing physically demanding duties every single day, wore a heavy-duty belt and body armor, spent long hours in patrol vehicles, repeatedly got in and out of those vehicles, responded to emergencies, and physically restrained suspects under extreme conditions. These duties caused repeated trauma to my lower back over decades. My first back injury occurred in 1992. I injured my back during a struggle with a large suspect under the influence of PCP. Injuries like this were expected and often went unreported. Between 1994 and 1997, I filed multiple minor injury reports, and in 1999, a severe injury prompted my first workers' compensation claim. The City of San Diego has never denied any of my claims, determined them to be work-related, and my doctors, including Dr. Dodge, agreed these injuries were 100% work-related. Dr. Tayyab's report incorrectly states that my first injury was in 2009. It ignores decades of documented injuries, treatments, injections, and ultimately surgery performed by Dr. Dodge in 2021. Dr. Tayyab states I last worked full duty in February of 2023. I was actually placed on light duty permanently on August 17th, 2022 by Dr. Dodge due to permanent restrictions. At that time, continuing full duty work while wearing a duty belt would have caused further injury and likely required a spinal fusion. After that date, I can no longer perform essential functions required as an officer, such as responding to emergencies, qualifying with my weapon, attending mandatory events in uniform, and performing field duties. While Dr. Tayyab attributes my condition to obesity and degenerative disc disease, it has been proven that degenerative disc disease can result from cumulative trauma. Having heavy lifting, wearing a duty belt, prolonged sitting in patrol vehicles, repeatedly entering and exiting vehicles, and physical struggles with suspects. These are all police duties. My injuries have prevented me from maintaining physical activity, which has led to some weight gain. The weight gain is a consequence of and not a cause. After decades of cumulative trauma, I was no longer able to perform my duties as a police officer. This has also affected my everyday life and lifestyle. I respectfully ask the board to consider my full injury history, the evidence of the cumulative demands of police work in reviewing this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Servin.
Thank you.
Okay, starting with consent agenda. Items 1 through 3, approve the industrial disability retirement applications for Ana Alvarado, Jose Bantam, and Armel DeMalig. These 3 applications for industrial disability retirement were unanimously approved by the committee, and as they are for the same type of benefit, the following applies to each application. The committee unanimously approved these members' applications for industrial disability retirement, as each application was supported by evidence of being permanently disabled, being attributable to work duties, and causing the need for leaving employment. Are there any questions from the board on these consent agenda items? All right. Consent agenda item 4 is to refer to hearing the industrial disability retirement application of Raul Ariano. The evidence for this application for industrial disability retirement includes disagreement between medical physicians and the matter of industrial causation, which by its nature should be further explored, and as such, staff and the committee on a vote of 3-1 recommended sending the application to a hearing officer. Are there any questions from the board on consent item 4 before we skip over 5 and move to consent item 6? Okay. Consent agenda item 6 is a recommendation to deny the industrial disability retirement for Derek Thomas. The committee unanimously denied the application for industrial disability retirement as the application was not supported by evidence of being permanently disabled by an injury attributable to work duties. The committee did not consider a non-industrial disability determination as the member is currently retired and their standard retirement benefit is greater than a non-industrial disability benefit. Are there any questions from the board on consent item 6 before I move to approve the recommendations for consent agenda items 1 through 4 and 6? Okay. I'll wait for my button to populate, and then I will make the move to approve disability consent agenda items 1 through 4 and 6. I saw Brett out of the corner of my eye reaching. I had to beat him. So please record your vote.
And Mr. Chair, just for the record, this motion was moved by Mr. Brett Bartolotta. I think he beat you there to the button. And with all votes in, the motion passes 9-0.
Very good.
So I have a question on item number
Yes.
5. We're going to go to that item.
So we're gonna, it looks like we have the public comment. We can do it now, yeah. Go ahead, please ask.
Can you please remind the board of the process of it, the committee directing this to a hearing? What's the next steps?
Okay, well, thank you for that. Let me move forward, let me jump forward to that. And I'm looking for where we have that. Skipping ahead.
I was thinking of item number 7. That is my bad. Lisa Marie, what was it, your question again?
I just want to know what's the process,
process
for going to
for-
the hearing. So Mr. Servin obviously has some concerns about the recommendation, and so did the committee, and that's why it's going to a hearing, I'm assuming. So then what is the process from here?
Yes, so the recommendation from staff was to deny the application just based on staff's analysis of the medical records. And after a very engaging committee discussion, they said, you know, there's still maybe some gray area that maybe we should further explore the medical records. And so it would be benefit to go through the hearing process. And so for board policy, the board has the authority, when they have a recommendation, to either follow the recommendation or refer it to hearing to further explore issues, or you could return it to staff for further analysis. Or you can approve it. So in this, the committee recommends sending it to hearing just to really explore the medical records to make sure that we get it right. Because as you know, we really want to find the truth in the matter, and sometimes these gray areas are very difficult, and so the hearing process really helps us to further explore the evidence to make sure we have a good conclusion to the issue.
So will Mr. Servin have an opportunity to submit data on his?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And Mr. Servin can be improper. We always recommend applicants have professional help going through the hearing process. And that's one of the reasons Mr. Brewster asked to change the process, because that can be an expensive process to go through. And so we really don't want to send everything to hearing because that does take a lot of time and a lot of money. And so we do so judiciously when we really need help as a committee or a board to find the truth of the matter.
Yeah, and Lisa Marie, I would just say to explain, so when we discussed this at committee, there was some discussion about simply approving his disability retirement. And I think some members of the committee were uncomfortable with going that far. And so the committee, after discussion, agreed that a reasonable path forward would be to send it to adjudication instead of flat out approving or denying.
Okay, thank you.
All right, yeah, over 90%, just as more context, over 90% of the disability applications are approved, and rarely do we go out on a limb on our own as a committee and go against the recommendation of the administrators. But this was one where we, yeah, like as was said, we would like to give an opportunity to have a deeper dive into. So, okay, consent agenda item 5 is a recommendation to deny the disability, industrial disability retirement for Ernesto Severin, rather than accepting that, as we just said, the recommendation to deny. However, the committee unanimously recommends sending this application for industrial disability retirement to the hearing officer to further explore the medical evidence and to determine if the injury is attributable to work. I think, are there any more questions on that before I move this disability retirement application to be referred to hearing? No?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
Please record your vote. All right.
And with all votes in, Mr. Chair, this motion passes 9-0.
Thank you. Moving on to consent agenda item 7, continuation of the hearing officer's recommendation to deny the industrial disability retirement application of Joel Epstein. At our November meeting last year, the board approved returning Mr. Epstein's application and the hearing officer report back to the disability committee so the committee could directly evaluate the medical evidence and read the hearing testimony prior to making a determination and recommendation to the board. At our January meeting, the board granted a non-industrial disability retirement pending the board's determination on his industrial disability retirement application. The disability committee reviewed the evidence, medical reports, and hearing transcripts and was unable to make a determination at yesterday's meeting due to a split vote of the 4 committee members in attendance. The committee unanimously decided to continue its deliberation at its May 2026 meeting, when we expect full committee member attendance, and as such, there is no recommendation from the committee on this item today. And then I was going to ask, are we able to have a substitute at any time if we are short in the future? Are we able to have a substitute sit in?
Yes, we amended our board rules so that the president could make a temporary, like an ad hoc committee appointment.
Okay, I like that. That
How'd
might
I
have
do,
been-
Johnny? Larry?
Okay, that's fantastic.
Was there a sitting member today who would like to help the disability committee for the next
I'd be
meeting?
happy to.
Okay.
Well, in May, we anticipate Paul Kaufman will be able to rejoin the committee, which will give us an odd number. So,
That'll be good.
Well, in case he can't go.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
In case he can't go, at least we have a recommendation.
I haven't let y'all know yet, but I will have to miss the next 2 disability committee meetings and board meetings. So just, I'm ruining everything. I'm sorry.
No, that's
So,
good.
so yes, we
so we
would,
need
we would love
Louis.
an ad hoc appointment.
Yeah, we will work on that, and if any members would like to sit in on a disability meeting in the future, since we're going to be short, and we can get that number to a nice, yes, Bobby, fantastic. Thank you.
Right before the B&G meeting.
Okay, perfect.
Okay,
Okay. So, for the record, Louis will be an alternate for the next meeting.
We're gonna need 2.
And Ms. Roberta Spoon as well.
And Bobby's-
so next meeting will be our usual, we'll have 4 like yesterday. It'll be Paul, Chris, Christiana, and then Lou would make the 5th. And Bobby, you're always available as well. Okay, good. Maybe
No more action on my part, right? Okay.
Correct. You are a very good board president. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
And then Lou will be able to take the afternoon off because he doesn't have to sit on the investment committee if he goes to disability, right?
Okay, any other questions before I move on to the information
No,
item?
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, staff provided an educational information item addressing pre-existing medical conditions and how they impact or do not impact determining disability benefit eligibility. This is always good, thank you. No all-encompassing rule can be applied to every application, as each disability application has a unique set of medical record facts, although there are instances where the initial medical evidence does not provide sufficient insight to make a committee recommendation. The disability process does allow the committee and the board to forward such applications to a hearing officer to further evaluate the medical evidence. Are there any questions or comments before we move on to reports?
Nope.
All right. Disability report provides an overview of the disability application review statistics, highlighting the caseload is, again, in good shape with a caseload of 17 applications with all but one case within the 18-month processing window, which has been delayed due to the member's non-related health condition. Any questions and comments from the board before we move forward?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Jamar and the group, I think Johnny as well. They went over to the city to understand a little bit better about their accommodation process and so on. And it's really important that we're as in sync as possible. We've had circumstances over the past few years where the city determined somebody couldn't work anymore, but our rules were different, and potentially they wouldn't qualify for retirement, and they'd be in a sort of never land. So the more we understand that, the more we're in sync with that, the less likely that kind of thing is going to happen. So thanks for taking the initiative and doing that. I appreciate it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris. Good comment. Lisa Marie, back to you.
All right, well, thank you, Paul, for the committee report. We'll now move to Section 8, Business and Governance Committee, and I'll turn it over to our Chair of B&G, Bobby Spoon.
All right. The Business and Governance Committee met yesterday to consider 2 action items. And before I review the 2 action items and make a motion for the consent agenda approval of action items 1 and 2, are there any action items the board members would like pulled for a separate vote? All right. Starting with consent agenda item number 1, staff's recommendation to approve SDCERS administrative budget for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2027. The committee unanimously recommends approval of the SDCERS fiscal year 2027 administrative budget of $19.4 million. Our finance director, Ted LaSalvia, highlighted how the majority of the budget is labor and how staff recommends keeping the staffing level constant by reducing staff for 1 vacant position and adding a position to the information technology team. The small increase in labor costs for staff salaries and benefits is the primary reason for the 1.2% increase in the total budget. Are there any questions or comments regarding this? All right. Thank you, Ted, for your excellent work on that and your presentation. Moving to consent agenda item number 2, staff's recommendation to amend the ethical conduct, compliance and training policy, fraud and criminal acts policy, return to work after retirement policy, and the securities litigation policy. And that was from Johnny. The committee supported the proposed changes as they were generally clarifications of the existing policies. Are there any questions from the board on this item before I move approval of the consent agenda items? Oh, great. So I move.
Somebody already did.
No, Michelle moved, which is just fine.
Yes.
No, there you go.
No, you can do it. Well, now it's gone again.
It's gone.
Here we go. Oh well, let's
Please
vote.
record your vote.
Please.
All right.
And with all votes in, Madam Chair, this motion passes 8-0. I'm sorry, I apologize. I need to correct my answer. It passes with 8 yeas and 1 abstain.
Thank you. We heard reports from Member Services from Natasha, from Benefits Administration from Sandra, and from IT from Michelle. And we were provided with written reports from Johnny on the legal division, from Ted on the finance division and the financial statements in the budget, and Johnny on the compliance program. Are there any questions from the board or staff? Great, hearing none, back to you, Lisa.
Okay. Well, thank you, Bobby, for the committee report. We'll now move to Section 9, which is the Investment Committee. And as the Investment Committee Chair, I'll give a report out. So the Investment Committee met yesterday. We had a full agenda with 5 action items and 1 information item. So I'll just briefly summarize those actions. So the first item was to approve $50 million commitment to KKR Optimistic Real Estate Credit Fund 3 for SDCERS real estate portfolio. KKR Optimistic Real Estate Credit Fund 3 is a closed-end non-core debt fund focusing on investing primarily in the senior first mortgage loan backed by commercial real estate. SDCERS has been invested in KKR real estate since 2021, and the investment has returned a healthy 16.4 net since inception, and the item was approved. The second item was to approve $40 million to Crow Holdings, which is also to add to the real estate portfolio. Crow Holding Diversified Value Added Fund 11 is a closed-end non-core fund focusing on industrial development, multifamily, niche property types such as manufactured housing, student housing, and self-storage. The fund is targeting a net IRR of 12%, and SDCERS is also eligible for managing the fee discount in this investment. Number 3 was to approve a $100 million commitment to Macquarie Global Infrastructure Fund, and the board approved an additional 1% to infrastructure to be invested directly to balance the risk of the infrastructure portfolio. And Macquarie Global Infrastructure Fund is an open-end core fund focusing on diversified infrastructure investments, regulated utility, digital infrastructure, and transportation. And the fund has a strong performance to date with a 10.4 net since inception. And this item was also approved by the committee. We also had $50 million commitment to IGNIO Global Diversified Infrastructure Fund. An IGNIO Global Diversified Infrastructure Fund is an open-end core fund focusing on diversified infrastructure, and this fund stands out as it focuses on middle market and exposure to the Asia region. This fund has a return of 9% since inception, and this item was approved also by the Investment Committee. And the last item was approve a $20 million commitment to Francisco's Partner 8, Fund 8 at $20 million, and then a $5 million Agility Fund to Fund 4. And this would add to our private equity portfolio. And both of these funds are buyout funds that focus on repositioning and optimizing technology companies in North America and Europe. And so it was definitely a full agenda. We did ask some good questions about just what kind of global geopolitical risks there were with any of these funds, and they assured us that at most it would be not tangential, it would be mostly inflation related. And so I think that gave me some comfort. The last firm was all technology, and that was an interesting comparison to the other firms, which are really looking at buildings, infrastructure, airports, utilities, regulated utilities. So I really think the staff did a good job of finding infrastructure investments that are safe, that have strong returns. And I'd like Karina to just speak a little bit about how you were able to negotiate the fees by commingling them with our financial advisors.
Most certainly. So in all of these cases, we were able to work with our consultants, be it Makita or Callan, to essentially aggregate our assets together with other client assets that they have invested, and that helps to essentially bring down our fee levels. So we're very happy with that.
Any questions? This doesn't require a vote from the full board. Any other comments from my other board of directors? Go ahead.
Karina, just a question about real estate in general. I'm looking at our performance as of June 30. Just the report from, I think, from the ACFR or whatever. And it looks like in our real estate area. We've got a 10-year return of 5.7%, 3-year of 4.3, and so on. I mean, it hasn't done very well, as near as I can tell, unless I'm misreading this. Do you have any comments on what's going on there?
To the Makita report.
No, it's an Aon report. Aon gave us a report of how our various sectors are doing, you know, infrastructure, private debt, and so forth. And so this is from actually June 30th. I'm just using it because it's the end of the fiscal year. But I guess what I'm saying is it appears that real estate really isn't doing very well. Our real estate section is not doing very well.
Real estate in general has had a rough go, particularly like in comparison to other like equity returns. You know, the S&P was up almost 18% last year. If you look at the 10-year number, we are exceeding the benchmark by, it looks like 70 basis points, 5.3 versus 4.6. You are correct in the nearer term. We've had some underperformance. If you would recall, a couple years back, this had actually reversed because we were underweight office, and office had not performed very well, so that was actually helping us. But again, with these types of assets, we want to focus more on the long-term return. And so, yeah, it'll vary quarter to quarter. But I do think that, you know, again, showing that 70 basis point differential over the 10 years is still meeting our objective, and since inception, outperforming by 30 basis points, 8% versus 7.3.
And that's how we're doing versus the benchmark. I get that.
That's right.
But
the actual absolute returns have been somewhat compressed. Yes, you're correct there.
Yeah. Okay, it's just an interesting sector that, I mean, obviously we want to diversify and all the rest, but for 10 years, having a 5.7 return, I'm kind of surprised at that, so thank you.
Yeah.
I'm curious if, in addition to the returns, does the real estate provide any kind of cash flow? And maybe you could, speak on that and describe the usefulness of that even when the returns are.
Yeah, just as an asset class, it is generating income for us. And we've had this discussion before that we're somewhat in negative cash flow situation where we're paying out $50 million in benefits every month. So this does help us. It's real estate is sort of a hybrid between income generating asset class and an income and capital appreciation, excuse me. So that does buffer us to that extent.
So perhaps looking at the returns without considering the cash flow component wouldn't be a complete picture of the usefulness of that investment. Does that sound right?
Yeah, well, I would just say that the income component of this really does help to dampen the volatility of this asset class. So when we look at it in the portfolio context, having this exposure to real estate over the long term helps with our risk-adjusted return.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Well, and doesn't a sector like housing also hedge against something like inflation?
Most certainly. Most certainly. And I think Lisa Marie pointed this out before, you know, to the extent that there is increased inflation worries, some of the infrastructure assets are directly tied to inflation. So actually the income that those are producing year by year is directly connected with any changes in CPI. So it is an inflation hedging asset, as is real estate.
And also, one of the investments, they were saying there was a 20 to 40-year horizon, but we will get annual cash flows.
That's great.
Yes.
It's important.
Mm-hmm. So these are long-term investments, so it really is challenging to look at a 1 or 2 year return in absolute.
And would you, does that have maybe a higher level of usefulness considering that 2/3 of our members are, you know, how does that match up with our risk in that nearly 2/3 of our members are receiving the benefit? They're retired and receiving the benefit. Do we want to have a more conservative risk approach and place more emphasis on cash flow, given that our members or such?
So we look at our liquidity analysis every 3 years in depth with the asset liability study. So that really helps us determine how much we should have in these more illiquid, private type asset classes. But just going back to this cash component, like for example on infrastructure, we saw yesterday, really half of the return is coming to us through cash yield. So this is definitely in terms of like risk posture, this is a lower risk asset class than, for example, private equity, where obviously a lot of it is in the capital appreciation component. So we're balancing these aspects to essentially meet our liquidity profile and what our needs are to ensure the timely and accurate payment of benefits.
But I think it's also important to note that just the aggressiveness of the fees that you were able to negotiate and the discounts that
Yes.
we receive for these high-quality investments as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, so that concludes the Investment Committee report. There was one information item. Katie Constak from Aon did provide us a total fund return, or the year-end, quarter-end as of December 31st, and the total fund return was 2.4 net in quarter 2025, performing in line with the benchmark. All asset classes in the portfolio posted a positive absolute return. Outperformance occurred in non-U.S. equity, diversifying private debt. Infrastructure portfolio was offset by underperformance in private equity and real estate. Over the calendar year, the total fund returned 13.1% net. Karina, do you have any additional comments about the return?
Not about the return necessarily. I mean, we do expect to see more median return versus our peers, given the amount of equity exposure that we have. We have had very strong equity market returns the last 3 years, so that does not surprise us. I would just say that we're making good and steady progress toward meeting our target asset allocation, and as we talked about yesterday, we put pretty much the 1% additional allocation to infrastructure to work with the hiring of Macquarie and Igneo. And in our May meeting, we're going to be looking at our diversifying portfolio, where we're also looking to put an additional 1% to work there. And so that's just more to come. We're making good progress on meeting our long-term target of 5% to private debt. We're going to be looking at a couple asset-based financing strategies in May. So yeah, that's really the update.
Thank you, Karina.
Thank you.
So if there's nothing else to report for the Investment Committee, there were 6 reports, and I would defer to your packet. So that concludes the committee report for investments, and I'm moving now to Section 10. Questions and comments from the president, trustees, and staff. Do we have any questions or comments on the education session reports from members? You have a comment?
Oh, I always have comments.
Go ahead.
All right. So to begin my comments, I'd like to recognize and thank Lisa Marie Harris for volunteering to serve on a trustee panel at the California Association of Public Retirement Association conference held earlier this week just up the road in Carlsbad. It was a very well-received panel, and it really reinforced sound leadership and governance. And admittedly, in the audience, I felt, really proud to be part of SDCERS based on Lisa Marie getting up and talking about how boards should operate and what, sharing with other trustees on, lessons learned and how we should all work together. So thank you, Lisa
And I
Marie.
did refer to Greg several times.
Is that positive?
Yeah, it was positive.
And speaking of governance, we believe we have a good date for our board retreat. So thank you for all your patience in my numerous surveys where Rosie and I were working to find a common date for everybody. I think we got everybody but one, so I'll apologize to that person in advance. We're looking for April 27th. Again, that's a tentative date, but we just found that commonality yesterday. We still need to make sure we can get all the speakers that we're hoping to be with us on that date lined up.
And what time do you think we'll start, Greg, just to mark off our calendar?
9 o'clock. So I'm hoping to start at 9. Of course, we will have some, you can come earlier for some networking and have some refreshments. And then we hope to end mid-afternoon. We know that's a sweet spot.
Like 3 or something?
Even maybe a little bit earlier, yes.
2,
Apology accepted.
Thank you.
Totally accepted.
And again, we really anticipate this is going to be a very investment-centric day. I know we've had a lot of thoughts and ideas about other topics we could talk about at the board retreat. We're still putting the agenda together and kind of the march and how it's all going to unfold. And if I can put some of those topics in, we'll do that. But if not, we'll find other dates to have those other conversations. Let's see. We've been trying to meet with the mayor to re-emphasize our need for appointments, and that can be a challenge. The mayor is a very busy person, and his calendar is always in a state of dynamic flux, but we think we've locked down a good date, which is March 27th. So we'll be providing the mayor with our standard update of, what I call the state of SDCERS. How are we doing? What's our key issues? And one of those key issues really is appointments to this board. I have been partnering with Chida Warren Darby, who is in the mayor's office, and she is trying. And so with her encouragement, she says, Greg, yes, please speak to the mayor about it. So we are working collaboratively with the mayor's office, and we hope to get some appointments. So, and again, if anyone knows of people that would be available to serve on this board, please forward their names to me, and I would be glad to talk with them and help guide them through the mayor's commission's portal to get their names to be considered. Also, following our January meeting, the SDCERS communication manager, Jessica Taylor. Say hi, Jessica. She and I met to provide a new reporter with the Voice of San Diego, Mariana Martinez-Barba, an overview of SDCERS. She is new to the Voice of San Diego, and she is kind of like the downtown political beat. So it was great to spend quite a bit of time with her, and it was just time well spent. It was a really, really good, positive meeting. And I was really proud the next day there was not a news article on us. So we really opened up and was very transparent, which is one of our organizational values. And I was really glad that she had really demonstrated integrity and just learning and using that as background so that when we have future issues and items, she'll be more informed. So that was nice.
And Greg, I'd like to add that she initially requested to meet with me, and I said, well, I prefer to meet with Greg. So thank you, Greg, for taking that on. And if you do get an inquiry to meet with a press, feel free to reach out first to Greg before you take that meeting. Thank you.
I'd also like to recognize and thank two staff members who presented at the National Council of Public Retirement Systems and SDCERS, their Communication and Member Services Conference held here in San Diego. Not too long ago, just at the beginning of March. Victoria Westfall, who provided a demo of our website member portal, and Jessica Taylor, again, hi Jessica, who presented our use of artificial intelligence to produce member benefit educational videos that are posted on our website. So thank you, Victoria and Jessica. I would like to recognize and thank one of our outsourced IT professionals who recently retired, Alfredo Nieto. He was an outstanding part of our help desk team, and we wish Alfredo well in his retirement. He's going to be greatly missed. Just a really fun person to work with. I would like to recognize and thank the board and the staff for successfully identifying our crafty phishing emails and no one being tricked into clicking on any of those malicious links that we put out there. It's the second month in a row with no failures, so nice work. Appreciate that. And I would like to recognize and thank Johnny Tran for stepping up and serving as CEO while I was a world away for the entire month of February. Lots of magic happens behind the scenes to make the operations run smoothly, and Johnny performed very, very well in this leadership role. So thank you, Johnny. Nice work. I appreciate you.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you, Johnny.
And lastly, on a personal note, Lisa Marie, thank you for agreeing to serve as president for another year. I know that was not a decision you took lightly, and I just really appreciate your leadership in look forward to working with you. So thank you.
And I look forward to grooming Michelle so she can take over in a year.
And that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So do we have, are we going to go into closed session, John? Oh, you have a,
Excuse me.
go ahead.
Tough act to follow, but I just want to remind everybody, and I know I'm a broken record on this, but way back when I came on the board, we had a deputy CEO, and she left unexpectedly. She was our kind of backup. And at that time, there was a lot of discussion and concern about succession planning and also having an emergency plan. So we brought on a group called Global Governance Advisors, thanks to Bobby, who recommended them to come in. They came in February of 2024, so a couple of years ago, and gave us a number of recommendations, which they suggested that we get to right away. And we're 2 years down the line. So I would strongly encourage, and I know Michelle's working on this, that we get going. Thank you.
And I just, for the record, it's not Michelle, it's your CEO, so who's the bottleneck. So thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Brewster.
So Greg, at the next meeting, maybe you can report out on your schedule with working with Michelle. Is that helpful, Chris?
Whatever it takes to get this thing moving.
Okay. And who are the committee members again?
You.
Or do we need one?
Lou, me, Michelle, and there was somebody who was not here anymore.
Louis Wynn.
Oh, wait, Louis.
So do we have, do we need to add a new member?
We can talk about that after the meeting.
Okay, perfect. So no further comments? Okay, so do we, any other further comments before we go to the next section? No? Okay, so do we have closed session?
We do have a very short closed session to talk about the active litigation listed.
Okay, do you all want to take a break and then we'll come back for closed session?
Thank you, Lisa.
Well, it is it's a religious school, Jesuit. Yeah. Okay, yeah, similar, clean, beautiful, yeah.
Professors all handing out their personal phone numbers.
Exactly. So we have finished closed session. We'll return back to open session, starting with section 12, closed session report. Johnny, do we have a closed session report?
We have nothing to report out. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to section 13 of our agenda, adjournment. So our next meeting will be May 8th. So look forward to seeing you all on May 8th. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.